Hi everyone, welcome to the visual guide for Cinder Drift. This is the new trial made available by patch 5.2 in Final Fantasy XIV, Echoes of a Fallen Star. We're here to undermine the Garlean Authority, laser-focused and red-faced, clawing our way to a win until we nail it. My name is Magitek and I'll be your trial guide. Stamp will target the primary target with a heavy-hitting tank buster. Cooldown and heal through this as necessary. Optimized Ultima will deal high raid-wide damage. Healers be ready. Flexi Claw will cause a number of cracks to form outwards in a spiral from beneath the boss. You'll notice that these cracks will alternate short and long all the way around. Once these cracks finish forming, large AoE circles will explode from their tips and players will need to avoid these areas to reduce damage and debuffs. If the boss casts Liquefaction, the ground of the platform will turn to quicksand and you will quickly sink to your death. To avoid this, all players must move on top of the cracks. If the boss casts Undermine, the cracks themselves will explode and players will need to move away from them to avoid damage and debuffs. The boss will only cast one of these Flexi Claw variations at a time, but the first one is random, so be ready to adjust accordingly. Ruby Ray will destroy anything in front of the boss. Move behind the boss to avoid it. The next Flexi Claw will form a three-pronged radial pattern underneath the boss, with 3 circle AoEs beginning in the center. The lines radiating outwards are the paths that these AoE circles will take. Since they're pretty big, players will need to carefully position themselves between the Helio Claw attacks as they move on their tracks towards the outside. High-powered homing lasers will target 2 players with these stack-up markers. The raid will need to split in 2 to share the incoming damage. During Raven's Flight, you'll be able to see the direction the boss is charging light up on the platform. The tricky thing about this phase is that the boss is very large, and you'll need to move far out of his way to avoid getting clipped as it flies by. The best way to handle this is to determine which direction he's flying in first, and then get behind him to avoid the rest of his pathing. When the boss flies to a random edge and casts Ruby Dynamics, all players will need to run into his hitbox to avoid the attack. Immediately after, all players will be targeted with homing laser AoE circles, and you'll need to spread apart to avoid overlap. These mechanics will repeat until the second Raven's Flight, after which he'll begin a very long optimized Ultima cast. The group will need to destroy Ruby Weapon before the cast goes off, or you will wipe. If you are successful, a long cutscene will play and you'll enter the second part of the encounter. From this point on, if you wipe, you'll start back at the same checkpoint. Meteor Project will cause Dalamud to reform in the background. For now, this can be ignored. Negative Personae will spawn 2 Raven's Image ads in the east and west and render the boss invulnerable. These will need to be immediately picked up by each tank. The damage dealers will then be marked with these purple circles and soon targeted for Meteor's stream. Affected players will need to move away from others to avoid overlap. Ruby Claw will target each tank for 5 rapid heavy hits. Cooldown and heal through this as necessary. Another round of Meteor streams to spread and the ads should be dying around this time. Once both ads are down, the boss will be targetable again. Healers will need to be on the lookout for the Dalamud timer, as heavy damage will occur once it falls. Cooldown, shield, and heal through that blast. Another Meteor Project cast will refill the Dalamud gauge, but again, this can be ignored for now. Magitek Meteor will bring down a massive meteor into the center of the platform. Magitek Comet will call down 4 comets that deal proximity-based damage as they fall. Players will need to move away from these to reduce damage. Once these comets are down, players will use them to hide behind and avoid the Magitek Meteor exploding in the center. If you don't hide behind properly, you will die, so watch those big toes. Next up, Mark II Magitek Comet will call down 4 moving comet markers that will rotate around the platform. Once they settle down, a player will need to move into each circle to keep the comet from hitting the platform. If a comet is allowed to hit the ground, you will die. The remainder of the players will need to destroy each comet before it crushes the player holding it up. During this time, Bradamante will target players with these long column AoEs. Move out of these as necessary. Around this time, Dalamud will be falling again, and the group will need to stack up for cooldowns, heals, and shields. One final Meteor Project cast, and then the boss will begin to spam cast Outrage, dealing high raid-wide damage. The group will then have to burn down the boss before the next Dalamud fall, or you will die. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Up next, we'll check out the extreme version of this encounter. As always, thanks for watching. Till next time.